recording. I hope everybody's having a awesome Sunday, as I said prior, and an awesome weekend overall. As always, we greatly appreciate your time. We greatly appreciate your attention. Today, we wanted to take it basic with you guys. We wanted to go back and talk about something that we actually have not spoken about in quite a bit of time, but it's something that impacts us all every single day as options traders, and that is the options Greeks. So, in this class, hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a thorough understanding of all the Greeks and their implications on your trading. But also, we kept this one rather short for you guys because we know it is Sunday and we want you to enjoy your weekend. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, before we get into it, guys, while a lot of people may not talk about the option Greeks too much, it is like the underlying movements of your option contract. So like even if you're a day trader and you don't pay attention to these things, because I know some people don't, it's still important to kind of get an understanding of what's going on in your underlying option contracts, right? So and how they behave and why they move the way they do.
Absolutely. It really does impact us all.
Yep.
So, Austin, would you like to start?
Yeah. So the Greeks, briefly summarized, right? So traders sometimes use the Black-Scholes model, which is a model that was created a while back that kind of sums up the Greeks, I guess you could say, and people use that as a big part in their trading. The equation listed here is what goes into like determining these things. You don't necessarily need to understand it, but what's more important are the derivatives of the model, which are referred to as the option Greeks, right? So the Greeks include delta, gamma, theta, vega, and rho. Rho is not something that we pay attention to much. The main ones we're going to be going over today are delta, gamma, theta, and vega. We will go over rho, but it's not as important as the others, I would say. So.
Yeah, and that brings up a valuable point. Not all of these are things that we look at before we get into every single trade, but it is very important to know about them regardless. And we're thankfully advanced enough now that we don't have to use the Black-Scholes model to price our options contracts.
Right.
Thinkorswim does that for us, very, very thankfully. So yeah. We're going to first get into delta, because I feel like delta is the one that I pay the most attention to, and same for most people. So the first Greek that we're going to go over is delta, which represents the rate of change between the contract price and a $1 change in the underlying stock. Puts have a negative delta, since they increase as the stock price lowers, and the delta varies between -1 and 1, and gets closer to either end. The further in the money the option is. So for puts, it's going to be -1 to 0, and then for calls, it's going to be 0 to 1. So delta is also commonly used to determine the probability of profit for each contract. This is important for different trading strategies when determining your risk-to-reward tolerance. We talk about that a lot. If a put has a delta of -2.259, it has a 25.9% probability of expiring in the money. And if you wrote this put, then you would therefore have a 74.1% probability of profit. And here is just an example options chain. And as you can see in this example specifically, this is the same example we have for all the slides, by the way. The delta is 0.578, meaning if SPY went up by $1 while holding everything else constant, the contract would cost pretty much 57 cents more, or $22.86 for the contract value. Additionally, the option has a 57.8% chance of being in the money by the expiration date. So, Austin, I do want to go over, and if there's any other analysts in here, how we use delta, but I'm curious, how do you kind of go about delta in your everyday trading? Do you care about delta at all?
Yeah, I care about delta. I give it a quick glance. It definitely is meaningful if I'm holding a contract for an extended period of time, right? When I'm in a day trade in and out, I'm not looking at delta too much, but I'm definitely acknowledging it. Like I said, I'm looking at it more so if I'm holding a contract for more than a few hours to a day. So,
awesome. Yeah, I personally try to look for a 0.3 delta or higher. Obviously negative if we're in the puts scenario, but that's pretty much all I'm looking for. And sometimes, even if I find a contract that I like, I will push that rule aside pretty much.
I believe in
Oops. All right, sweet. Yep, so the next one is theta. This is honestly my favorite option Greek out of all of them. I know Logan says that he uses delta a lot. I love to acknowledge theta because that's like the killer of the contracts, right? Theta decay is quite horrible if you've went through it, especially when you're playing weekly contracts. So if you guys don't know what theta is, commonly known as the time decay Greek, theta represents the rate of change between the option price and time. So it's the option price's relationship with time. Theta is measured per day. So in the example below that we have here, the contract would decrease in price by about 0.089 from today to tomorrow, right? We can see down in the option chain right there, the theta is negative 0.089. So why would we be concerned about theta? Why do we need to acknowledge it? Why does it even matter, right? The further away the option is from the expiration, the more you pay for time premium. That's why, right, when you go out further in your option contracts, you're paying more for those contracts, right? Because you're paying for that security of time, that premium, which is the underlying cost of theta, right? So you're paying more to have more security in a sense for time in your option contract. People are willing to pay more money for time as it gives them larger opportunity to experience a swing in the stock price. So the longer you hold a contract, the more of an opportunity you inherently get to succeed, right? If you're taking a 0-day expiration contract and there's 30 minutes left till market closes, that contract is not, you're not giving yourself very much time to succeed in there. So the theta is going to be like dirt cheap, right? The contracts are going to be extremely cheap and the risk is going to be extremely high. So it's not really super, smart to buy something that's expiring very soon because theta will just kill you, especially if you're out of the money. So in this example, theta is negative since it decreases the price of an option. If SPY increased by $1 tomorrow, this contract would increase by 0.578 because of delta, right? And we just went over delta, but decreased by 0.089 because of theta. Therefore, we can expect the contract to be worth 22.28 plus the 0.489 or 22.7. So I know that might sound confusing, but essentially you're acknowledging what the contract will be worth when acknowledging theta's influence on the contract and delta's influence on the contract, right? But theta, right, the point that you need to understand, is it just me or is the sound really low? Okay, it's just you. Thank you. If you guys have any technical issues, please let us know. But the thing that you need to get home, that you need to really drive home about theta is understanding that it is the relationship with your contracts in time, right? So if you're far out of the money, right, and your expiration is soon, that theta is really going to come in and take a beating on your contract, right? And that's going to be the Greek that you're going to want to pay attention to the most. And me personally, this is the one that I pay attention to most in my trading. But we're all different.
We are all different, absolutely. And that's something we're going to talk about in just a couple of slides.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even if you don't look at the exact number of theta, which I do not, understanding how theta works is incredibly important to your trading, 100%. But exactly, I don't look at the number itself, but I understand that if I'm swinging a weekly contract and it's a 3-day weekend, that even on that day closed, theta's going to destroy my contract.
Theta's still doing its job.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it would be a detriment to actually hold that contract longer just due to theta alone. Even if price stayed completely constant, you'd still be losing money over that time. So, and like Austin said, the 0DTE is a great example because that's when you're going to really see theta eat up your contract. I'm sure you've seen after 12 or 1 p.m. hits on a 0-day contract, those premiums are moving a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, any consolidation or any price movement in the opposite direction, theta is just really going to kick your butt, So,
yeah,
on those 0 days.
Absolutely. So now we're going to go into Vega, and we out of the important Greeks, we're going to say this is the last one that you should really be learning about, and it represents the rate of change between the contract's price and the implied volatility. So implied volatility is measured as a percent, and a higher percentage means there's a higher IV. Something you guys hear us talk about a lot is IV crush, especially for our earnings players out there. And IV crush is an important term when referring to when there's a sharp decrease in implied volatility due to a highly anticipated event happening, such as earnings, and can cause your contract to lose value even if the stock moves in your favor. For example, IV is usually high pre-earnings and drops after earnings are released. If you purchase a call with a higher Vega than Delta and the stock only increases by $1, you will lose money. And we'll see that happen all the time, and you guys will be super confused if you just rush into an options play during earnings, and maybe earnings goes in your direction, but not enough to the point where you get IV crush and you're just sitting there curious why your contracts are worth nothing. So that is what IV crush is. But yeah, going off of our last example, if SPY increased by $1 and the IV of the contract increased by 1%, we can predict that the option price by adding delta, subtracting theta, and adding vega is around $23.56, and then it goes through those past numbers that we were talking about, which you can also see above. Austin, are you using vega a lot in your trading on a day-to-day basis?
No, I am not, but it's definitely... what we acknowledge is the relationship that these things represent, right? And that this one for Vega is the implied volatility. And I love, Logan, that you brought up IV crush. This is something that we pay attention to a lot, and just the general implied volatility on an options contract. So, though I'm not necessarily like looking at Vega, I'm like, oh, this, is not going to be a good option contract for me because the Vega is this. It's definitely important to understand what Vega is and why implied volatility is so important. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you should acknowledge it.
So Hector just asked, in this example, is 23.56 the Vega? No, so the Vega, we can predict the option price. So that's the option price by adding. So you see, we can actually just walk through really fast. The $22.28 is the original price. Adding delta 0.578 minus theta, right here, 0.089, and then plus Vega right here, plus 0.790. So the Vega in this example is 0.790, and the IV, again relating to Vega in this example, is almost 24%.
Right, and this is like obviously overcomplicating things a little bit, right? Like you don't have to do these equations or be like super invested into what these numbers mean necessarily. It's more or less just understanding the relationship that your contracts have with these different things in the market, like time, implied volatility, and change.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So don't get too caught up or confused by these numbers. We're just trying to give you all the kind of everything that goes along with it.
Right. You need to understand these things and then understand how they correlate to your existing positions. Like Austin said, I'm not actively looking at Vega, but IV crush is something that you have to be aware of, and that's why we're always looking for the implied move on an earnings play whenever somebody's in earnings plays, because we don't
right, or just in general, right? If the implied volatility is super high through the roof, like I mean, I'm not going to be wanting to go near those contracts necessarily, right? Because you need a very large move to satisfy to get any gain. So yeah, definitely.
But if you're like me and you don't trade earnings plays, then you don't really need to worry about Vega too much.
Cool. So now we're going into I would say maybe the less important ones, Logan. It's subjective for everyone. I don't know if that's how you feel.
Yep.
Yep. So gamma, right? So what is gamma? Gamma is the derivative of delta. So it's measuring delta's rate of change over time. So what gamma is acknowledging what delta is doing. If an option has a gamma of 0.02, that means delta will increase by 0.02 tomorrow. Okay? So it's acknowledging what gamma is doing. If two options have the same delta but different gamma, you can differentiate riskiness of the two with gamma, right? Telling the difference between the two. The option with a higher gamma value implies higher risk, while lower gamma represents lower risk. So I hope that makes sense. Gamma is highest for options that are near the money and is lowest for options that are far out of the money or deep in the money. So I'm not personally paying too much attention to gamma, but I am acknowledging that it represents the rate of change over time while acknowledging delta, right? The rate of change over time of delta. Again, not too much that I'm acknowledging from it, but it's there and you should understand what it is. Logan, do you have any thoughts on gamma?
No, not really. Because usually we're trading rather intraday. Gamma doesn't really affect contracts in that manner too much. But I suppose if you're looking for the rate of change of delta, it makes sense to be looking at gamma. Depends on the kinds of trades you're taking, which is what we're going to talk about in the next slide.
And there's strategies that involve you to look others more than others, right? So I mean, yeah. Logan, do you want to go over row?
Sure. And row, like this one, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I don't think anybody really looks at row. If you ask anybody that trades options for a long time, if they use row, I really do not think a lot of them will say yes. So it is probably the least important Greek to learn because it doesn't really come into effect very often. Row represents the rate of change in an option's price relative to the change in the risk-free interest rates. This is more important when considering a portfolio of options, keyword portfolio of options, and there is a high probability of the Fed changing interest rates.
Yes.
It is mainly used for risk management purposes in entire portfolios, so for trading a few options at a time, it is not very important. Hence, why we do not use it too much.
Right, and like, for people who might not understand what that means, like a portfolio of options or like holding options for long periods of times throughout like market cycles, a great example could be like Michael Burry right now, right? He has a big long list of stocks that he holds, but his number one holding is an Apple put. Right, so he's definitely acknowledging row and acknowledging all of the Greeks to see how that large position is going to be influenced by the market. So yeah, people actually do have very large portfolios of options, believe it or not, and this is when it could be used. So pretty interesting.
It is. Cool. So that brings us into the understanding and implementation, and we've been pretty much covering this entire slide throughout the slideshow so far, but we just want to go over it again. Most traders utilize the Greeks differently, as we will share with you. Clayton and Logan are going to look and myself are going to look very differently at the Greeks, just like Austin and Zink look at them differently. Again, all of the analysts, if any other ones have come in, I would love to hear how they use all of the Greeks essentially, but learn what works best with your strategies. Again, it all comes down to really what kind of strategies you're doing. If you're buying just puts and calls, like you don't need to know a whole lot about them. You just need to understand how they influence your contracts, like we've been saying. But what you need in terms of time horizon, volatility, etc., and find out your ideal Greeks from there. So it's very much strategy dependent. You know, if you're managing a large portfolio with hedges and options, you're going to be weighing Greeks a lot differently than, you know, just somebody who's actively day trading.
Totally. But regardless of what you do, if you are putting your money in any shape, form, or whatever into options, you should have an understanding of what these things are. Because if you're trading options without knowing what these things are, you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage inherently. So
definitely,
yeah.
You don't want to get hit by the side by an IV crush and wonder what just happened, or you're holding your contract
by a 0 day and you're like, we moved sideways. Why is my contract worthless? Well, you got theta burned, right?
Right.
Your time on the contract is just, you're not there with it. So
why is say you buy another contract with somebody else, same ticker obviously, just different strike prices. You're going to be maybe wondering why it is that theirs is in a different profit percentage than yours is, and that comes down to delta. So just understanding how they work and influence your contracts is very important.
Yeah, and many different strategies can be implemented to take advantage of these things and whatnot. So I encourage people after this call, take time out of the day, by yourself to go and learn more about these things independently. We're here introducing, and we could talk about these things more, but it really comes down to you and how much you want to learn these things, because people write books on this stuff. So I definitely encourage you after this call, if you want to learn more and really get into the depths of what these things mean and how they're created in Black-Scholes model, all that stuff, I really recommend doing so.
Yeah. So we again wanted to keep this one rather short for you guys. So now
There's one more slide after this. I added it at the end. Sorry. Yes. Oh, is it not there?
I don't think it's there for me.
Oh, okay. Well, it was the symbols that the option Greeks have. Oh, maybe you got it. Yeah, there it is. There it is. So guys, if you look up options Greeks, why are they called the Greeks? Well, because they use Greek characters to describe themselves. And you can see here the deltas, gamma, vega, theta, and rho, how they all have their own different symbols. This might be a little, you don't have to know these, but it's good to kind of have the knowledge and understand what the symbols for each of these things are. So I just threw that in at the end there because we forgot. But
nice little graphic. Summarize everything up easy.
Yeah. So I hope everybody got some value out of today. Maybe you weren't paying attention to option Greeks as much in your trading throughout your trading career, but maybe today we'll open up some lenses for you guys and really kind of get you guys involved into understanding the intricacies of your option contracts and why they behave the way that they do. Anybody has any questions? We could do our best to answer them. But yeah, that's pretty much all we got. Hope everybody enjoyed that little live call. I really encourage you guys to ask questions. You guys can talk with your mics if you would like. If your server muted, that's just because there was background noise in your mic. Just go into chat and say that you want to be unmuted, and we'll make sure to do that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But if not, that's 100% okay as well.
Yeah, so, is there any, just to go back, Austin, is there anything that you're actively looking for in terms of a number out of a Greek, or do you just kind of understand how they impact your contracts and you can just maneuver around it that way?
No, man, like I said, I do acknowledge delta, and I acknowledge theta. Those are the ones that I'm looking at for the most part, and obviously I'm looking at the implied volatility and stuff. But no, I'm not letting the numbers take too much of a toll on what contracts I'm buying. For the most part, anyways, I'm trading SPY near the money, so all these Greeks are going to be relatively where you want them to be for the most part. But yeah, I'm not. It's not weighing me down too much in my trading process.
Gotcha.
Is it for you?
No, not really. The only one that I'm really looking at is delta, and then just understanding how the rest of them are impacting me. But like you said, it doesn't really affect my trading too much. Delta, the higher delta for me just keeps it so that there's a decent move when we are moving.
Right. And you could see how, if you don't have an understanding of these things, how it would be kind of detrimental to you if you're trading and you're like, why are my contracts losing so much value? You're like, nothing's even happening. What's going on? It's like, well, theta's hitting you, right? You need to understand what's happening and why stuff is appreciating or depreciating, right?
Absolutely. So, Nick, I'm curious. After this call, do Greeks make more sense to you? And yeah, guys, this video, this bi-weekly call will be up on YouTube. This is very
Yeah, they
important.
definitely make more sense. I even screenshotted like this last page just to keep in just to have for reference. Yes, if I
I can
ever
send
get
that to
asked.
you as well, my friend.
Yeah, I screenshotted it, so I have it saved. But yeah, if you want to, yes,
There you
if you could
go.
send
I
it
just
to me,
sent
that'd
it
be
in.
great. Okay, perfect. But yeah, I knew Greeks were always present, and I knew they were always a thing. Obviously, when you like go for your options, you care more about where the stock price is going to go. You don't really look at all these Greeks when going into a daily options trade because be like by the time you review all of them, the option price could be up already like 20% where you initially bought. But it's cool to look for like long term, especially if you're thinking about buying like how Clayton does like leaps. He
For sure.
probably looks at these.
For
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. And for all the strategies that he runs, right? I see Mr. Connections very important for covered calls, right? Which Clayton does actively. So it's definitely more important depending on what strategies you use or don't use.
Yeah, super simple, super easy, and yeah, super helpful. So when I decide to, if I do decide to do leaps eventually, just to try them out to see what I'm going to be looking for specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody yesterday who does like retirement accounts for people, and he does option strategies in those retirement accounts, and he has to, because he's deploying so much advanced strategies, he definitely has to pay much more attention to these Greeks than a day trader does, for example. Does the break?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What was that?
No, you're good. You're good.
Um, does the break-even price ever change due to the effects of these Greeks? That's a good question. I do not believe so.
No, I believe what changes the break-even price is the actual price movement of the equity.
Right.
Right.
Ben, I do see you're in here. If you'd like to unmute and share with us how you use Greeks, I'm sure that would be interesting because I know you probably use them a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the pretty correct way in saying that for the day traders, at least, it's not like we're, eyeballing the deltas and going, oh, okay, I'm going to wait for this to be like a .3 delta to enter. But it's really important to understand how they affect you. So when it comes to, I guess I'll go to delta. One of the examples that I like to reference is the difference between 1 and 2 in percentage terms is 100%. And the difference between 2 and 3 is also 1, but in percentage terms, it's 50. And the difference between 3 and 4 is also 1, but the percentage terms is, like 33%. So just having a very good concept of how these things affect. Okay, my delta is, this. I'll be I'll be in the money and my delta will be zero point 0.6 and I can roll in the dough. Like that, you got to have those thought processes with how these things work, because when you can use them in your favor, for example, Theta Gang is like a big Reddit subgroup, and they just prowl on people getting burned by Theta. So there's ways that you can use these things to your advantage, whether you're running advanced strategies like covered calls or or spreads or who have you, or if you're just trading naked. In your swings, I would say, like me personally, I never ever swing at the money or in the money, because I'll never pay intrinsic value for something that has relative time value. So I guess those are just like little tidbits that I've put together for myself over time through just kind of understanding how these function. So that's just a little bit on that.
Totally. Magni Cycler says, any examples of earnings trades where Vega influenced your decision? Well, Vega doesn't always influence my decision with earnings, right? I'm always paying attention. I'm acknowledging Vega, and I'm acknowledging the implied volatility, right? Like, because we said, if you purchase a call with higher Vega than Delta and the stock only increases by $1, you'll lose money. So, you got to acknowledge the implied volatility in Vega. But yeah, I mean, if I'm playing earnings and the implied volatility is just ridiculous through the roof, I'm probably not going to play it. Right, I don't like stuff with insanely high implied volatility. So yeah, definitely influences my decisions.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree.
And I don't really trade earnings anyways. I will from time to time, but not often.
Cool. All right, guys.
Yeah,
well,
that was really good. I think that was
yeah.
really insightful, and I hope it encourages you. I know we went through kind of like a little bit, and like some of the equations might have been confusing for you guys, but I hope this really kind of puts you on the right path to kind of understanding what this market consists of, and like how trading options is like. There's actually a lot more underneath the surface, right, of what goes on behind your option contracts.
Definitely.
So definitely very important to learn. Like we said, if you want to go on our website, there's a lot of information regarding this. We have a ton of edu on the option Greeks, very similar to the kind of stuff we have here, only a little bit more in depth. I also encourage you guys to just go and scour the internet for as much information as possible, as knowledge is very important, right? Knowledge is wealth. The more you learn, the better off you'll be.
Knowledge is wealth when applied, and you can absolutely apply this. So,
Yes, totally.
cool. All right, guys.
It doesn't mean that you should pay over much. Like, don't let this take over your trading strategy. At the end of the day, what really matters is if you're long when the stock goes up, or if you're short when the stock goes down. Right? That's inherently what matters the most. But you should definitely pay attention to these things.
Awesome.
So, awesome.
Well, thank you,
Very good.
thank you everybody for joining. We greatly appreciate you coming out on a Sunday. If you have a second, let us know how you liked the shorter bi-weekly call rather than the 1 hour. We'd love to hear your
Yeah.
feedback.
Yo, Logan.